A door shut on a Boston conference room in 2020, and for a moment the air felt ordinary. Name tags tucked against collars, a low hum of conversation, the smooth drag of a chair on carpet. Then, one gathering became a hinge in the story of a city, and the ripple kept going. What would you hold on to when a quiet room turns into an inflection point that touches strangers you will never meet? If you've ever stepped into a meeting that seemed small and self-contained, you already know how easy it is to forget the world on the other side of the door. This is a story about how those doors aren't really doors, and how thresholds we barely notice can swing entire lives. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll see how to spot a tipping point before it arrives, and how to act with the kind of responsibility that makes you proud tomorrow. Malcolm Gladwell returns to the landscape that first made his name, the subtle mechanics of how things suddenly catch. But this time, the mood is darker, more cautionary. He traces not just how ideas and behaviors spread, but how they can be engineered, nudged, or hijacked by stories and systems. He writes like a reporter who's also a pattern seeker, moving from boardrooms to neighborhoods, from college fields to city blocks, asking one hard question in different costumes. When does justice once become the start of a chain reaction? At the center is a simple, unsettling core. Tipping points are not only natural phenomena, they are shaped by the stories we tell, the people who carry those stories far, and the environments that make certain choices feel normal. If you learn to read those three forces, you stop being surprised by sudden change, and you stop pretending that nobody is responsible. The first force is the overstory, the big narrative that tells you what to pay attention to and what to ignore. Overstories are the weather of our minds. They don't argue, they surround. An overstory can be as grand as, "This is the land of opportunity," or as local as, "This neighborhood is going downhill." In Los Angeles in the 1990s, an overstory about urban danger made ordinary precautions feel like survival. When the story on the street becomes, "Watch your back," everything from how you walk to how you greet a stranger shifts a few degrees. Those degrees add up. A guard puts on an extra hard face. A bystander hesitates. A teenager, reading the room, decides that the only way to be safe is to be scary. The overstory, repeated enough, pushes a community toward its own punchline. It's not that the story is wholly false, it's that it's incomplete. Overstories are powerful because they're sticky. They explain everything imperfectly in one breath. You've seen this in your own life. Think of a workplace where the overstory is, "What gets measured gets done." At first, it sounds sensible, but watch what happens over time. People start shaping their days around what shows up on a dashboard. The dashboard is tidy. The work is not. Soon, favors that keep a team humane, the check-in, the mentoring, the patient explanation, vanish from the metrics and then from the culture. The story bends reality. The reality bends us back. A surprising outcome tips, and everyone acts shocked, as if the numbers weren't writing the script the whole time. So what do you do with overstories? You ask what the story makes invisible. Every sticky tale hides a lost object. In a neighborhood painted with fear, courage becomes invisible. In a company obsessed with numbers, courtesy becomes invisible. Find the hidden thing and bring it back into the light. If you lead a team, make the uncounted count. Write notes that only praise what no metric catches, and watch how people start doing more of it. If you lead a family, tell the story of the quiet kindness you saw and watch how the house gets warmer without you touching the thermostat. The second force is the superspreader, which in this book reaches beyond epidemiology. A superspreader can be a charismatic person, but it can also be an event, an institution, even a loophole. Not all reach is harmless. In one chapter, the focus turns on the way a permissive system let medical fraud bloom in a sunlit city that treated oversight as a nuisance. If the overstory is everybody does it and the environment hardly resists, one bad pattern becomes a business plan. That's not random. That's architecture. Superspreaders create shortcuts for behavior. They carry habits across social lines that would otherwise slow them down. Maybe you have your own superspreaders. Think of the person in your group whose mood sets the tone for everyone else. Or the weekly meeting whose patterns bleed into the rest of the week like dye in water. One careless joke from a beloved voice becomes a permission slip for the whole room. If you want to change a culture, find the superspreaders and make them your allies. You don't need to fix everyone. You need to fix the few who carry the most. There's a warmth and a warning here. Warmth because the superspreader can be goodness too. The person who normalizes apology, the leader who admits they're learning in public, the neighbor who starts a ritual of picking up trash on Saturday mornings and makes the street believe in itself again. Warning because bad actors are better storytellers than we expect. They know how to wrap damage in a ribbon. They look to the path of least resistance, and they follow it until a shortcut becomes a highway. That brings us to context, the third force. Context is the stage set that tells us what's easy, what's hard, and what's expected. We like to believe we're rugged individuals, but we're porous. If the default is simple and kind, we become more generous without moral effort. If the default is greedy, we become stingy without malice. Change the defaults and you change the averages. That's why the same person acts like a saint in one setting and a cynic in another. Context teaches the body before the mind even catches up. One of the book's most haunting threads shows how a single corporate gathering helped drive a public health disaster. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was something more ordinary and more dangerous. A context that felt safe, paired with a story that said the problem was somewhere else, and the speed of a few well-connected people traveling through many rooms. When context, overstory, and superspreaders rhyme, a system tips with shocking speed. We call it bad luck because that feels gentler than saying, "We designed this." Here's where the author does something interesting. He introduces a recurring motif about thirds, a way of seeing change as the interplay of three levers instead of a single cause. The idea isn't numerology. It's a reminder. When two of the three align, pay attention, because the third will follow. If you can strengthen any one lever, rewrite the overstory, partner with or neutralize the superspreader, or change the context, you can stall a slide or accelerate a recovery. The rule, as offered, is less math than mindset. Look for the trio. Ask which two are already singing the same song. Then decide whether to harmonize or interrupt. Let's bring this down to a human scale. Suppose you want to help a friend quit a harmful habit. Rather than lecturing, start with story. What narrative do they live in when they reach for the habit? Is it, "I'm already failing, so why try?" Help them name a kinder, truer story. "I'm rebuilding, one small proof at a time." Then, find the superspreaders in their life, the people or moments that make relapse easy, and recruit or redesign them. Finally, change the context. Remove friction for the good choice, add friction to the bad. A glass of water by the bed. A walk scheduled with a friend at the hour cravings hit. You just engineered a micro tipping point, but you called it care. The book also walks through cases where influence curdled into harm. The opioid crisis didn't spread because one doctor had a bad day. It spread because a plausible story about pain relief met a set of superspreaders with megaphones and incentives, and an environment that made scrutiny feel fussy. You don't need a villain when you have a system like that. You just need people who tell themselves they're helping until the body count rewrites the story for them. Here, the argument tightens. Responsibility isn't a hashtag, it's architecture. If your choices scale, your ethics must scale with them. There's a chapter that turns to elite sports at prestigious colleges, not to mock athletes, but to ask what signals we've decided count as merit. Sports can be noble, but they can also be a backdoor. When certain signals become golden tickets, you distort who gets to sit in the room where decisions are made, and therefore which overstories we all live inside. It's not the existence of games that's the problem. It's treating one kind of excellence as a universal proxy for all the rest. That's how systems drift off course, believing they're honoring virtue. What I appreciate most here is the push and pull between empathy and critique. You feel the sadness of families who trusted experts and were failed. You feel the quiet shame of institutions that chose expedience and called it pragmatism. But you're also offered a way to use the same physics for repair. Find the honest overstory. Trust the right superspreaders. Design graceful contexts. There's no romance in this, just the kind of hope that works hard. So how does this help you, sitting where you are, listening through your headphones or your car speakers? Start at the door. The next time you enter a room, your home after a long day, your office on a Monday, your group chat at midnight, pause and ask, what overstory rules here? Is it scarcity, speed, image, gossip? What's the one sentence that if I spoke it would bend the overstory a little toward truth or kindness? Speak that sentence. Then look for your superspreaders. Who is the person whose laugh, silence, or eyebrow raise ripples through the whole group? Ask them to help you change one small ritual. The first 5 minutes of a meeting, the way you close dinner, the tone of the feedback. Then shift a context cue. Put the hard thing you want to do where your hand naturally reaches. Hide the easy thing you're trying to avoid behind 2 extra steps. Most tipping points aren't dramatic. They're cumulative. You don't need to blow on the whole forest. You need to light a single porch lamp and keep it on long enough for others to notice the way home. There's also a moral line running under the pages. If you know how influence works, you can't pretend you're innocent anymore. If your company's incentives reward cutting corners, you can't pretend you're shocked when people sprint. If your platform amplifies the loudest claim, you can't pretend you're neutral when the loudest claim is untrue. There's a grown-up kind of hope on offer. Take responsibility for the leverage you hold, especially when your intent is good. Because good intentions without design are just wishes, and wishes don't tip anything. We end where we began, with the room that felt ordinary before it wasn't. The point isn't to make you afraid of rooms. It's to make you attentive to thresholds. Every day gives you a few. The moment you wake up and decide the tone of your home. The moment you greet a colleague and decide whether to see them or scan them. The moment you share a link and decide whether to pour gasoline or water on a public fire. You can be the person who notices the hinge and chooses to turn it gently. Let's gather the essentials. Overstories shape perception, often invisibly. You can edit them by naming what they erase. Superspreaders carry behaviors across boundaries. Partner with the ones who humanize. Constrain the ones who don't. Context writes defaults. Improve the defaults and you change outcomes without speeches. When 2 of these align, the third usually follows. That's when a bad pattern becomes folklore, or a good one becomes culture. You will not always be able to stop harm, but you can slow it, reroute it, and sometimes reverse it. And you can start something better than harm, something that spreads because it feels truer than the fear people were handed.
Before you move on, hold the picture of that closed conference room door in your mind. Doors look like separators. They're actually bridges. The way you step through them matters. That's the quiet promise of this book. Most of what changes the world begins with how we behave in small rooms. If you learn to see the 3 levers and pull even one with care, you're not just avoiding a disaster, you're participating in a future that doesn't apologize for the way it grew. Here's your simple next step, and it's our only focus for today. In one sentence, what tiny context change will you make this week that nudges you or your circle towards something better? Drop it in the comments. One concrete tweak we can all try tonight. And if you want to keep building this skill, tap the video on the right where we unpack how little things catch fire in The Tipping Point and how to use that wisely. Save this for later or share it with one person who needs a gentler default today. We're learning to be thoughtful together, one door at a time.